It's a pleasure to talk to you today about the Jamaican blue swallowtail. I'm Tom Turner, talking to you from Safety Harbor, Florida. This is a joint presentation with my colleague Vaughan Turland. Most of the beautiful photographs you will see today were taken by Vaughan. While attention has been paid to the homerous swallowtail, and rightfully so, the blue swallowtail has gone largely unnoticed, but may be more prone to extinction than its larger cousin. I began collecting butterflies at the age of 11 while growing up in Jamaica, and it was then I heard about the mystical blue swallowtail that magically appeared in Kingston, the capital, sometimes in huge migrations lasting for a few days before disappearing. No one knew where they came from, why they only appeared briefly, and where they were living for the rest of the year. It was not until I began living in Kingston while studying at the University of the West Indies that I began to witness these migrations for the first time. Finding the source of these migrations became an obsession. Each year, as soon as the insect appeared, I would drive east to see where they were coming from, investigating every turnoff along the way. I found the greatest concentration of adults at Roselle Falls, 52 kilometers east of Kingston. This is the kind of habitat I was searching. Here, up to 20 blue swallowtails could be seen sipping at wet soil near the small waterfall, while others crossed the road to imbibe on salt-sprayed beach pebbles. However, in most years, by the time the insect was seen in Kingston, the life cycle at Roselle had already been completed. And it was only in 1967, after an intensive 6-year search, that I found the breeding site inland from the falls. I will never forget the day when I found a small third instar larva sitting on top of an uneaten leaf and was finally able to identify the larval food plant. Then, between 1967 and 1971, I was able to study the life history and discover the secret of its long disappearances. The closest relatives are found in Cuba and Hispaniola. The next two slides are of the Jamaican blue swallowtail. First, the male, and second, the female. And as you can see, they are very similar in appearance. Today, we will share some information with you concerning this beautiful endemic swallowtail, its interesting life history, and the secret of its long disappearances. We will also share the challenges that the species faces that threatens its survival. Challenges that sadly have made those almost mythical migrations I once witnessed a rare event today. We will also indicate the key reasons why we believe the blue swallowtail is more prone to becoming extinct than any other species of Jamaican swallowtail, and why it needs urgent protection. Finally, we will discuss the steps required to reverse its present rapid decline. First, we should note that in 1985, the insect was listed as vulnerable in the IUCN Red Data book, and that since 2001, the butterfly has been accorded protection from collecting by Jamaica's National Environment and Planning Agency. From this, you might think there's already a safety net around the butterfly. However, there are no protections for the habitats where the breeding sites of this butterfly occur. If we take a look first at the distribution, the breeding sites, and the habitat, if we look at the smaller map at the top right, those localities marked in red indicate where the insect has been seen during the last 100 years. It can be found across the island, which once again leads one to believe there is no cause for concern. But that will be incorrect. After the discovery at Roselle, I conducted island-wide surveys beginning in 1968 and found just 5 breeding sites. These are marked in blue on the larger map. 4 of these were in dry limestone habitats at Roselle, Lancewood Valley, and Round Hill on the south coast, and at Rio Bueno on the north coast in dry limestone forests, which looks something like this. I found a 5th site in Mesic Broadleaf Forest in the rugged karst formations of the cockpit country. Another exercise I conducted was to document every date where the insect had been seen since 1918. From this information, I was able to plot the times of year the insect appeared. From these records, we can discern patterns of seasonal distribution. At Rozelle, in dry limestone forests, there are two important flight periods. The first mostly between May and June, but also a second, but much smaller flight, primarily in October. In the cockpit country at Crownlands, where there is even distribution of rainfall, adults are seen in more months, but usually in low numbers, and in some years, not at all. Vaughan has been visiting this population since 2006. Finally, at the Rio Bueno site, in disturbed dry limestone forest, we see the same pattern as at Rozelle with two main appearance periods. Before we look at the life cycle, let me tell you a little about the habitat at Rozelle. The breeding area is about 1 kilometer north of the roadside falls on a south-facing slope at an elevation between 60 and 200 meters above sea level. These so-called falls, by the way, have nearly dried up in recent years. The site is in a rain shadow area, receiving between 115 and 165 millimeters of annual rainfall, but with uneven distribution. In 1967, the known breeding area covered just 2.6 square kilometers, which is less than the size of New York Central Park, or about 1.5 times the size of Regent's Park, London. If we look at the larval food plant and life cycle, the larval food plant is Oxandra lanceolata, a member of the family Ananaceae. It is locally known as lancewood or rodwood for its straight growth habit. The egg and larval stages are completed in just 2 weeks. Adults sometimes emerge from the pupa 2 weeks later and live for just 2 weeks. So the entire life cycle can be completed in approximately 6 weeks. But what I discovered was that most pupae enter a state of diapause as a way of surviving long periods of drought. Diapause is broken after 75 to 100 millimeters of rain occurs within a 1 to 4 day period. This typically happens in May after a long dry period between December and April. 4 days after this amount of rain falls, many hundreds of adults emerge simultaneously. Males chase and engage with females in full flight and tumble down into the undergrowth where they remain coupled for between 2 and 4.5 hours. Within 7 days of that same rainfall, a new flush of growth is put out by the Oxandra trees. Females lay the small spherical eggs immediately below this new growth on older leaves. Larvae emerge 2 days after oviposition and begin feeding on the new shoots, passing through 5 larval instars in 12 to 14 days. Final instar larvae may be green or black in equal numbers, and these descend from the Oxandra trees to pupate in the leaf litter below. A few dead leaves are weakly sewn together with a few strands of silk, and pupation occurs during the following 48 hours. 97% of these pupae enter a state of diapause lasting 6 to 6.5 months. Just 3% emerge in less than 31 days after pupation, but without any evidence of further reproduction. A second but much smaller emergence occurs primarily in October. It is this much smaller brood which once again enters diapause that in turn gives rise to the larger broods in May and June of the following year. If we look now at the main threats to the survival of this insect, why is it in need of urgent protection? Threats to the butterfly are both natural and man-made. First, remember there are only 5 very small known breeding sites. Second, although no parasitization of any life stage was documented at Rozelle, in some years an unidentified spider extended webs all over the new Oxandra growth, removing larvae and rendering the trees unsuitable for oviposition. In those years, only a few larvae successfully pupated. Third, pupal diapause is both a strength and a weakness. In controlled laboratory conditions, 15% of the pupae were lost to desiccation, so humidity under the leaf litter appears to be of great importance. While diapause allows the insect to survive unseasonably dry weather, it also exposes the densely crowded pupae to easier destruction should that forest site be destroyed. Of greater concern are threats from human activities. Because Oxandra has a straight growth habit, this tree is in much demand. In the 17th and 18th centuries, old-growth Oxandra was exported to Europe for cabinet making. At the present time, saplings are still used for several purposes in Jamaica. For example, small saplings are cut in vast numbers to make Antillean Z fish pots. These are lost or damaged in storms and frequently have to be replaced. Yams are a mainstay of the Jamaican diet, and the plant requires long, straight poles to climb on. Here you can see the yam sticks protruding above the tops of the vines. Oxandra, as well as other saplings, are cut by the truckload for use as yam sticks. These last for only 1 to 2 years and have to be replaced, so additional saplings are harvested from the forest. This practice is a major contributor to deforestation in Jamaica. Charcoal making is another huge and unregulated industry leading to destruction of both dry limestone forest and mesic broadleaf forest. Here are bags of charcoal awaiting collection in the cockpit country. Dust from limestone quarrying is another serious threat. This plant is located within the already much damaged Rio Bueno breeding site. Let us take a look at each breeding site and see what the present status might be. The site at Roselle was originally covering an area of about 2.6 square kilometers. In the 1970s, the western half of the breeding site was bulldozed and planted in plantings, but after abandonment, the Oxandra recovered. In the early 1980s, the eastern half of the breeding area was destroyed for planting yams and by charcoal making. Only grassland remains there now. When visited in the early 1990s, a housing settlement was under development along the eastern boundary. Since 1966, there have been no reports of mass migrations originating from this site, suggesting this population has been minimalized. The butterfly still breeds here, but in far fewer numbers. At Lancewood Valley, the site is threatened by limestone quarrying to the north and by charcoal making. Large migrations still occur periodically, as Vaughan has observed. The status of the Round Hill breeding site needs to be investigated. Both Oxandra and the butterfly historically occurred here, but there are reports of forest clearing, cultivations, and charcoal making. Numbers of adults at the Rio Bueno site are fewer than other sites because perhaps most Oxandra saplings have been harvested, leaving mostly older trees. The site has probably survived because some of the Oxandra grow along the spectacular but nearly inaccessible coastal cliffs. The largest section of this site was destroyed by road widening in the 1970s, which included loss of Oxandra trees. Limestone quarrying at the west end of this site, as I already mentioned, threatens to destroy what remains. The Crownland site was almost destroyed by road building in 1968, but progress was fortunately halted by the steep terrain. This is probably the most undisturbed site remaining, and it's located in forest that is designated as being protected. Due to the difficult terrain, the full expanse of this site has not been determined. So let us look at what needs to be done to resolve the present situation. The larval food plant, the density of the larval food plant appears to be critical. Oxandra is widely distributed across the island on limestone, but the breeding sites appear to have one thing in common: a large number of Oxandra growing in a small area with trunks spaced about 3 meters apart, lower branches touching. Scattered trees appear to be less suitable for oviposition. Our research suggests this swallowtail is more prone to becoming extinct than any other Jamaican swallowtail. It only has one major annual brood that varies in numbers dramatically from year to year and relies on a smaller late-season brood to survive to the following year. It has one larval food plant that is not protected and is frequently harvested. It is restricted to 5 very small breeding sites with only one site in a protected forest. While pupal diapause beneath the larval food plant leaf litter can last for several months, these sites are susceptible to destruction, especially by human activity. The species is dependent on periodic rains for adult emergence. However, these rains, especially what are referred to in Jamaica as the May rains, are becoming less reliable due to climate change. An unfortunate truth in Jamaica is that species such as the Homer swallowtail and blue swallowtail are protected against collection or disturbance of adults or immature stages. Sadly, though, there is little or no enforcement for protection of the habitats in which these and other endangered Jamaican species rely upon for their survival. Our key objective is to prevent the extinction of the species. This can only be achieved by assured availability of larval food plant in suitable density. So here is an action plan which we think is necessary for the survival of the species. First, develop and implement a 5-year rescue plan. Second, employ and train wardens needed to monitor sites and collect data on the blue swallowtail during all stages of the annual life cycle. 3, reevaluate the state of the existing breeding sites, some of which have not been visited recently, to record the presence and density of Oxandra and the soil conditions, and to visit adults between May and June and September and November. 4, determine the present land ownership and possible protection strategies. 5, establish a nursery to propagate seeds of the larval food plant and transplant seedlings to selected breeding sites. From experience, we know that it would be very difficult to prevent encroachment of people and animals, even in protected areas. This factor will significantly affect our selection of breeding sites to be rehabilitated and expanded. 6, based on trends of falling population numbers and habitat destruction at breeding sites, the species CITES status should be reassessed from vulnerable to either endangered or critically endangered. We will need to prepare and submit the justification for this. In closing, we usually see the blue swallowtail as a spectacular electric blue flash dashing along forest trails. It is one of nature's visionary wonders that, once seen, remains etched in one's memory. Very occasionally, we see it in numbers nectaring on blossoms of the endemic mountain pride. Thank you for listening. We hope you will agree this is a cause worth pursuing. It is not too late to protect Jamaica's endemic blue swallowtail, but a conservation program urgently needs to be implemented. If you would like to learn more about these plans, we invite you to contact us at cwpublications17@gmail.com.